And again, I know this seems tedious, but it's really important that we understand how these tests work and how we can write tests so that we can make sure our stuff is actually working. So function test fulfill random words can only be called after perform upkeep. This will be public, raffle entered and time passed. This, okay. Arrange. So this is where we're going to try to have the mock actually call fulfill random words, and it should fail, right? So we're going to say vm.expect revert non-existent request. And here we run into kind of an issue. We want to make sure that calling fulfill random words in the mock is always going to revert, right? So what can we do? Well, we can do vrf coordinator v2 mock vrf at the vrf coordinator address dot fulfill random words 0 address raffle. So our vrf coordinator v2 mock has this fulfill random words function, which takes the request ID and the address of a consumer. And we want this, and we should expect this to fail, right? Because perform upkeep hasn't been called. So we need to make sure that no matter what we pass, this is going to fail. And then we also need this vrf coordinator v2 mock, import vrf coordinator v2 mock from at chainlink / contracts / here. Go back down. We need to make sure this always fails. So here we're actually mocking, we're pretending to be the vrf coordinator. Since we're using the vrf coordinator mock, fulfill random words can be called by anybody. So we want to make sure that this actually fails with non-existent request. If we go to the vrf coordinator mock, we look for this keyword, we can see if there's no request ID, we get non-existent request. However, if we really want to make sure there's no request, we would also probably want to check request ID 1. Well, if we really want to make sure, we should also check request ID 2. We should also check request ID 4, 3, and 4, and 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We should really check all of these. Obviously, this doesn't make any sense for have this huge test which tests every single one of these variables. So instead, what we can do is something called a fuzz test. And we're going to explain this a lot more later. Now, I've got some videos on fuzz testing, and we're going to watch these a little bit later in this course. If this part doesn't make total sense to you right now, don't worry, we're going to go over it in depth later on in this course. Instead of us choosing 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever, in our test here, we can say uint256 random request ID. And now we'll use random request ID instead of 0. What will happen now when we run this test is Foundry will create a random number for this and call this test many times with many random numbers, consistently checking to make sure this non-existent request error happens. So if we run this test now, forge test-m, we'll see that this does indeed pass, and we'll see on this line here, we'll see that this had 256 runs. This means that Foundry generated 256 different random numbers and ran this test with 256 different random numbers. We'll learn more about adjusting the number of fuzz runs and more about fuzzing later, as fuzzing is one of the most important skills to learn when it comes to security and testing your protocol.